Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Eric. Doing good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Busy.
Awesome.
Doing well.
Yeah. Were you able to attend any of the other sessions?
I did. Yeah, I was sitting in on uh, her name escapes me. That young woman who was works out of Denver. It was alumni, and she worked on a cruise, right?
Yes,
And
Hannah.
Anna, that's right. Yeah, she had an interesting story. I chose to listen to her because she's just next door, basically. So I'm just south of her. Just
Yeah, I thought that. You guys are both in Denver, right?
I'm actually in Monument, which is just south of Denver and just north of Colorado Springs, old town. I thought it was nice
Okay.
place between the two cities, so if I was looking for work either direction, it works. It's not like a super short commute, but I can make it work.
Yeah, you two should definitely connect. We need more like UX Academy alumni networking sessions. That would be so cool. We used to do more of them, in person in different cities. So the next time we can do in person, we'll have to get one together in the Denver area.
Absolutely, that'd be cool. I also miss face to face meetings with people, right? So that'll be a good day.
Uh, That'll be a great day. Yeah. Next step is probably like hologram versions of each other, right? We get the
Cool stuff going on, right?
yeah. Well, I see we have people filing in. We have 15 people jumping in so far. I know everyone's wrapping up their networking, but if everyone just wants to pop into the chat, make sure to toggle over to the session chat away from the event chat and let us know, where you're tuning in from. Say hello. If you already have burning questions for Eric, feel free to pop them in there. We're going to have plenty of time to get to all your questions. We'll just give it another minute or so before we get started.
Sounds good.
Hey, Gladys from Miami. Great to have you. Katie in San Diego. Niren moved to Chicago from Denver. Another Denver person. Kathleen from Florida. Hey. Oh, great pronunciation. Thank you. Oh, I don't know if I can pronounce your last name though. Uh, hey, Greg from Colorado Springs, another neighbor.
Hi, Greg.
Cool. We got 23 people in here now. So I guess we will go ahead and get started. Just want to introduce everybody to Erik Gartzke. Am I saying your last name correctly, Eric?
Sounds right to me.
Artsky. Okay, awesome. So Eric is a user experience designer at Centauri, also known as Space Camp. I'll allow him to elaborate on that. He is also a Marine and a UX Academy alumni. So we're super excited to have him here today to tell us all about his journey. So let's start that at the very beginning. You started off your career in the Marines as a geospatial analyst. Tell me about that.
Sure. I'll be honest, it wasn't something I exactly expected when I signed up. I kind of was going open for whatever, thinking I probably was going to go infantry is what I was expecting. But yeah, after did some testing and stuff like that, they said, nope, we want to put you into signals, and then ended up being geospatial analysis. So if anybody doesn't know what geospatial analysis is, it's just a fancy word basically for using airborne imagery and satellite remotely sensed data for Earth observation, and then doing analysis on that data. So you can study things like, obviously for defense purposes, but then also like natural resources, agriculture, environmental issues, disaster relief, all these kinds of things, based on elevation data or spectral signatures. A lot of that sensors collect information from different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, which, light is just visible light is just this really tiny portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. And so you can basically identify all sorts of different features on the Earth using different signatures. So you can see very clearly where, say, like cuprite or hematite is in soils and earths and stuff like that, or find out if plants or crops or forests are stressed, or if there is if there's some kind of parasite or something that's affecting them, and that kind of thing. So yeah, so I did that for about 5 years.
Very cool. That's such interesting work. Sounds very important. So, after getting out of active duty, I know you began doing enterprise IT for several different Department of Defense contractors. What did that entail?
Sure. So while it was with different contracting companies, it was all for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which is quite a mouthful, but they used to be called the National Imagery and Mapping Agency. Back when I was in the Marines, the school that taught me how to do my job was from them, basically. That was their school that they ran. So after I got out of the Marines, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. So I went back to my home state of Wisconsin to kind of regroup and figure things out. And then I had some guys I had served with who were working down in St. Louis at NGA, and they said, hey, you're cleared still. You should send your resume down here and see what you can do. And I thought, yeah, what the heck? I don't got anything to lose. And ended up scoring a gig down there. And so it was kind of a bit surreal in some ways, supporting the agency that I had leveraged so often in the field in the Marine Corps. So actually at one point was managing servers that were like directly that I had pulled data from just a few years before. So that was kind of interesting. I initially started off with supporting other GIS analysts there at NGA. And basically just helping if they had problems or if they didn't know how to do something, but then also providing some support from them from an IT perspective. And I just kind of eventually moved away from that company to another company who held a different contract, but at the same agency, and started doing enterprise IT there in their data center with hundreds and hundreds of servers, server racks, I should say, with probably thousands of servers. So, but it was fun and it was interesting, and I met amazing people. And I still feel that same connection with the kind of that industry now because it's DoD still, but it didn't exactly scratch the creative itch. So
Good point. And hey, Wisconsin, go Pack.
that's
I'm a
right.
fellow cheesehead myself. Yeah. My family is from Wisconsin too.
What part of it?
Marinette, I want to say. Yeah, my mom grew up there, but
Awesome. Close to Milwaukee.
yeah. Cool. Yeah, worlds definitely collide, like with your jobs and here. And yeah, so, after 5 years in the Marines, I think it was, and then, like 10 years in various IT positions, I know you moved to Colorado, where you currently are, to take a job at a startup. And it was there that you made that transition from lead IT architect to creative director. So tell us more about what made you decide to take that switch into a career in UX design.
Sure. So the title thing just makes it sound a lot fancier than it really was. It was a startup, very, very small startup. In fact, it was a GeoInt startup, so a geospatial intelligence kind of commercial startup, and also contracting with government. But initially, I'd signed up because of the IT. I was a founding member with a couple other people I was in the service with. And we had, at one point, I think about 12 or 13 people. But, a lot of startups have a hard time. We had ups and downs, and we eventually lost our web designer, developer, and marketing and branding folks. And when that happened, we had a void to fill. And it was more of a situation where I was the least worst pick out of the rest of us who handled this situation. I have always been a hobbyist with Photoshop and art and things like that anyways, so I was super keen into doing that. Didn't mean I had to stop doing IT stuff. I had to do both now, but that's how I kind of picked it up and started to do more branding and marketing, and probably a pretty shoddy job of it. But you make do with what you've got at the time, and there's a lot of times it's just like putting out fires and stuff. But we had a piece of software, a plugin that we had created that was for another piece of software that we use for doing spectral analysis. And it was a great plugin, and I had thought one day we could probably turn this into its own standalone piece of software in order to pitch the concept and idea to the president of our company. I just jumped into Illustrator and Photoshop and started mocking up designs. Completely blind. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even think about it as in terms of a career field or anything like that. I was just like, we have this thing and it'd be better if it was something else. And so I'm going to try to do something with that. And while there was, virtually no user engagement there to make that happen, us being in the field, we sort of had some insider knowledge as far as having been users in it. So in any case, I put that together, I pitched it to our president, and he really liked it. And then we decided we're going to go to the board with it. And that's actually where I came and discovered XD. So I was like, there's got to be a better tool for this that's meant for doing this. And then I found the XD, and I built a better mock-up in XD, and then kind of discovered UX at that point, or at least UI at that point, and then UX, and was super fascinated, instantly drawn to it, and started just researching it more and more on my own. So that's how I came into it. And then after that startup, I did a second startup that it was already existing. I joined out of Munich, Germany. They were a former partner of the first startup, and they made me their UX designer for a while I was there, because I basically took it upon myself to find a project where they had no funding coming in. It was a joint project with the European Space Agency, and basically was an option where scientists and researchers could draft up a proposal to the European Space Agency, and they would get credits for data and services. And the data and services were through the company that I was with. But the store was not being accessed, and the budget wasn't being spent. And with government, you need to blow a budget in order to keep the program around. If you don't blow the budget, if you got anything left over, they're going to cancel your program. So we needed that to happen. And so I took it upon myself to design a solution for that, and basically work with marketing for personas. They were marketing personas. They weren't super detailed. But in any case, within 2 months, we ended up turning around and blowing the entire budget. So it was a total success. And that was like my first, I guess, more serious foray into trying some UX. But I was still totally fumbling about and muddling through.
I'm hearing it was a lot of being self-taught. So at what point did you discover Design Lab and decide to make that leap into taking UX Academy? It's a big commitment. Tell me about that.
For sure. I spent many nights thinking about it, to say the least. So the second startup I was working with out of Munich, Germany, while it was great, they had some hard years already with their finances. And so they unfortunately had to shut down the US office for that, and ended up getting laid off. And instead of me looking for work again, I was like, I need to do more to kind of back up the UX stuff so I can try to get into that more, because I'm not gonna be able to just jump into anything without some more education and background with that. So at first, I wasn't really sure what to do. So I did a semester of college in multimedia graphic design, but it was just really slow paced. There's always all the initial courses you have to take. I needed to make a decision now, because I've got a wife and a kid and a house and a mortgage and things. So I needed to kind of accelerate that. So near the end of that semester, I started looking at other options, and that's where I came across boot camps. And I started researching all the boot camps, Springboard, Career Foundry, Design Lab, and so on. And did a lot of research, did a lot of soul searching, talked to my wife about it, because, it's a big deal to make a career shift like this, this dramatic. I have all this IT experience. I could have done that, but it just wasn't, it wasn't resonating with me, and I wasn't super happy doing it. It's not that I wasn't busting any knuckles. I wasn't, coughing up coal miner's lung or anything like that. So I can hardly complain, but I really wanted to do something I felt was more harmonious with myself. So once I looked more into Design Lab's UX Academy, I read a lot of reviews on it, and it just sounded awesome. I liked the website. I liked the language that was being used. I liked all of it. And so I applied and was lucky enough to be accepted and jumped into it.
That's great. Thanks so much for the plug. So what was your experience in UX Academy like once you finally made that jump? Maybe you can tell us about what was the most helpful part or your favorite part about the curriculum?
So, I really liked all of it. There's so many different components of it that's really good. The content is relevant and up to date, which is super important. I liked that a lot. I felt like the format was pretty easy to follow. I never really felt lost. The UI for the platform and stuff is really good. But it was really challenging. You definitely have to push. There was a lot of long nights, and I do suffer from perfectionism, which is definitely going to be your enemy in a UX bootcamp. You need to push forward. I would say that probably some of the most valuable things would definitely be like the various networking that you can do with other students. You do these design crits where you kind of like go over your work with others, and they critique yours, you critique theirs. You kind of learn how to do that in a good, kind way, a thoughtful way, but also in a supportive way, and vice versa. And you make some good contacts. I still speak with some people that I was in class with that are awesome. So, and you try to help each other out. With whether it's with projects or advice or ideas or work or anything. So that was really good. And then of course the mentors, I think is critical to it all. So, folks that are oftentimes they're, working in the field while at the same time teaching. So you're getting, not only are you getting like relevant current information from them, you're also getting their perspective from their corner of the industry, from who they're serving, who their user bases are. And there's a lot of really talented people who are experts who have different opinions, and sometimes they don't always align. You'll get different opinions that just don't agree. Doesn't mean though that you shouldn't heed them both. It might depend on the situation you're in. And so I felt like there was really good advice and learning from that, from the mentors. So that was super key.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And thanks for reminding everybody about the importance of networking. We keep saying that on this call, and we actually do have a virtual networking mandate now that in-person events aren't a real thing anymore. But, we do require that our students attend virtual networking events because we just want to really hammer in like the importance of networking for getting, a job in UX design. So let's move on to the next chapter of your story. You ended up, graduating from UX Academy and landing this amazing job that I'm just so thrilled about. And I know I said this on the main stage, but you're a UX designer at Space Camp. Tell us what Space Camp is and what you do there, because it's so cool.
Sure. So Space Camp, as you'll find with so often in government and military, is an acronym. So they love their acronyms. But Space Camp stands for Space Commercially Augmented Mission Platform. And it's essentially it's an Air Force. It's owned by Air Force right now, but the Space Force is kind of moving in. And so there's a lot of interesting things changing hands there between Air Force and the Space Force. But it's a software factory within the Air Force. And the way that we work is, government for a long time has used like waterfall for development, and everything's based on requirements, and it's just very slow to change. And obviously, anyone who's anyone in the commercial is of course doing agile, some flavor of agile development, and human-centered design, right? And so we're, as a software factory, we're trying to constantly advocate for a human-centered design approach, and using agile. We use extreme programming for ours, which means that developers are paired together. And while that does slow down kind of like the divide and conquer of development work, it allows for them to do a better job of keeping their code clean and helping each other, and catching any mistakes, and that kind of thing. So there's definitely some benefits. Usually our teams are consisting of, so I'm on a product team. We're all together in this big camp, but we kind of separate off into these product teams, and then we get together regularly and talk across product teams to like how things are going in our respective roles. So our product team will have myself as a designer, and we'll have a product manager who's kind of, takes care of all of the business needs basically for this product. They keep track of like the budget and timelines, and kind of keep the tempo of everyone. And then we have the developer team, and the team can vary in size, especially since we're doing paired programming, depending on, obviously the tempo and the size of the product, and where we're at with it. Like if it's a new product, it's going to have a bigger team to make it get off the ground faster. But it's always led by what we call an anchor, who's like the lead dev. So, and we use what's called balanced teams for our methodology, which is we're just constantly collaborating together all day long. And now that everything's remote, it's constantly in a Zoom channel, or at least in several breakout rooms. And we just communicate all day long with everything we're doing, and we collaborate with brainstorming and solving problems, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of what we do at Space Camp.
Thank you for sharing that. I know Kathleen said in the chat, basically the coolest job ever. Yes, I echo that sentiment. That is just the coolest job ever. I always wanted to work for NASA. I don't know what I would have even done for NASA, but that didn't pan out. But I'm basically living vicariously through Erik at Space Camp these days. So you kind of touched on this, but have you worked on any exciting projects at Space Camp that you can share, or is it like all top secret?
Um, I can talk about it a little bit. So right now I'm on a product team. I've actually been on two different product teams so far that were centered around COVID. So this one is more of like a contact tracing and sort of like I guess it's kind of like for commanders, they can kind of like look and see um, threat assessments for their base and how much is being impacted by COVID. But the idea is to go beyond COVID as well, not just stop with this one pandemic and kind of use it for other things. So there's that one. And then another COVID app that I worked on previously to this, which was right when the pandemic started. Basically, I got pulled from the project I originally was on and put onto that team. And that was more of like a troop readiness app for like mental and physical readiness and whether or not they're impacted in some way by COVID. And that was kind of key because there's a lot of people who are obviously not going on the base anymore. Everyone's told to stay home, so they didn't just have the visibility really like they would normally have when people would, join for formations or see people in the shop and that kind of stuff. So there was a need for that. And I know neither of those are space related, so that's probably not super exciting. But it's kind of a necessity. Just you do what you're told, and that's a big need right now, and so it's kind of makes sense. But before COVID happened and changed everything, I was working on a space asset monitoring team that basically watched various space assets like geosynchronous orbit satellites, for example, like low Earth orbit satellites. And these are all like your satellites that would be responsible for like communications, weather, GPS, all that kind of stuff. So super important especially for all of us as just regular citizens, consumers, whatever. In terms of just like modern life and stuff. So one of the concerns that we have is what's called the Kessler syndrome, which some of you might be familiar with, which basically you have all these orbiting bodies, these assets that some of them are dead, some of them are no longer in use, so they don't have a way to pull them. Atmospheric drift will eventually will definitely bring them back into the atmosphere and will burn up, but sometimes they could be a risk and collide into another asset. And these things are probably, they're all moving at probably at excess of 10,000 kilometers an hour. So they're flying around at extreme speed. So if they collide into each other at that speed with no resistance in space, it creates this basically a cascading effect. That's the fear. That's what the syndrome of Kessler syndrome is this cascading effect where all this debris will continue to spread out and then hit another asset, and that one will basically blow up and then hit another asset. And then it gets to the point where it pretty much destroys all of our geosynchronous low Earth orbit satellites. And then we don't have GPS anymore. We don't have comms anymore. It's a really big risk. And basically create an asteroid belt around the planet and make it really difficult for many, many years before we're able to put more satellites up in that space. So, I mean, there's other assets that go way far out, high Earth orbit and way out, ellipses around the planet and stuff like that. But those ones are key, right, to modern day life. So that's just one example.
Thanks for giving us the inside scoop there. I feel like we have some insider knowledge now. That's all really sounds high stakes. Very cool. I just want to remind everybody that we have 6 minutes left. So if you have any questions for Erik, you can pop them in the chat. But in the meantime, I'll just continue with my questions for him. So now that you've graduated UX Academy and landed this super amazing job, what advice would you give to people who are considering joining UX Academy, people who are current students, and maybe people who have already graduated and are looking for work?
Okay, for students, I would say be flexible. You're going to learn a lot of different techniques. A lot of this stuff is like design thinking, for example, is really like a framework or a methodology. You're going to go into each of these facets of design thinking, and there's just a whole bunch of different tools at your disposal in each one of these stages of design thinking. even if you're doing a lean UX, which we basically do lean UX all the time because of agile, you're still grabbing, you're still going back to these central methodologies within design thinking for like discovery and empathizing and defining and then ideating and all these things. So if you find that something's not working, a certain tool or whatever, then don't waste any time. Jump right back into trying something else. To experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment with stuff. Also, I would say, for students or anybody really, is try not to compare yourself to others too much. I think there's not a lot of value there with that. Everyone is muddling through, but at different levels, right? And for time and everything they put into, and effort they put into it. So just, I would say, compare yourself to yourself, but to your past self, and say, if you could look back 3 months or 6 months and say, am I better than I was 3 months, 6 months? Am I moving in the right direction? Then that's a good thing, and you should be happy, and you should be proud of that, and just keep going with that same momentum. For people who are in, and I guess everyone as well, I would say stay humble. There's always other people that you could be learning from, even if they seem like they're junior to you or something like that. Just keep the ego in check as much as possible, and be open-minded and listen and empathize with your fellow designers and with your developers and with everybody on your team, not just the users. Okay. Yeah, be kind. Kindness is never wasted.
Kind. I love that. That's great advice. Thanks for that, Erik. I'll kind of wrap up my questions with you, as I see we have a few popping in, but just wanted to check in with you. It seems like, you're working remotely potentially. How has the current pandemic been going for you? And do you have any professional goals to see through for the end of the year? Or?
Sure. Yeah, definitely working remotely. Pretty much as soon as lockdown started, we worked remotely. I was pretty well equipped to do so because I was already working remotely from the startups and from the second startup with the German company I was working with. So I was able to do that pretty easily, although I was really looking forward to kind of an office gig for a little while and face-to-face communication. Our campus is super cool. When it is open, it's very laid back. I mean, we've got beer on tap and stuff like that. It's a super chill environment, very, very friendly. But we do well working remotely. We will probably reintegrate. I mean, we can go back to the office occasionally, and we have when we've had guests from the Space Force and the Air Force, and have done demos and stuff like that. So, but when we do, practice social distancing and have our masks and all that kind of stuff. So it's good, and it's pretty limited when people do go back. As far as, I think you asked about goals. Well, one is to continue to advocate for human-centered design and agile within the DoD, which is a constant kind of battle because there's a lot of hearts and minds that still have to be won, and that's a big part of what we do at Space Camp. Other thing is for me personally, I want to do more workshops and design sprints. Without being able to go face-to-face with our users a lot of times, we have to get more creative and doing things remotely, and workshops and design sprints are a big part of that. Lastly, I probably would want to work on some front-end dev skills. Not that everyone has to try to do that. I'm not saying you got to be a unicorn, but I think it helps to build empathy with your developers, and you can also assist with some of the front-end stuff. So those are my goals. Oh, I can't hear you, Alexa. Mm-mm. Nope. I can read your lips, but I can't hear you. I'm guessing maybe it was through your earbuds, and they might have died on you with the battery or something, right? Yeah. Maybe I can take a question while you're getting that hooked back up. So Ron asks, should you learn more than one tool for designing for graduating? You probably will. I tried when I was doing it, when I was going through UX Academy, I tried to do a couple. I did some stuff in Figma, especially with the Design 101 course. I did Figma, and then I did XD, and I did Sketch. Different shops use different tools. At Space Academy, our approved UI designing tools. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other tools besides the UI designing tools, but our Adobe XD, which I love, Figma, which is also a great tool, and then Azure RP, which I have not learned yet, and from my understanding has the toughest learning curve. Let's see. No, I can't. Sorry. I'll take another question while you continue. Okay. Let's see. Suggestions on how to get into space industry as a UX designer. That's a good question. I feel like I was pretty lucky on that. I think I would say if you are flexible and willing to move, that's going to open up more options for you. Obviously, there are places where there are hubs for like space stuff. I mean, I think Huntsville, Alabama is one area, for example. Here in Colorado is another one. Florida would be another one. And then if you're not worried about the United States, you know, you can always look at Europe and European Space Agency, and that kind of stuff could be possible for you to look into. Yeah, just be really flexible, and you'll have more opportunity. We lost Alexa. Okay. Cool. So thanks, everybody. Sorry we didn't get to more questions. I guess I run a little long with yakking. Have a good day.